Hey, John.
Oh, good morning, Nick. I've never even asked you, is your real name Nicholas or is it Nick?
No, my real name is Nicholas, but I'm only a little bit like Joe was only ever called Joanne when she'd been naughty or in trouble. I'm only ever called Nicholas by family when I've done something dreadfully wrong. The rest of the time, my family call me Nicky, and everyone else calls me Nick.
Nicky. I'm not going to go there. I did want you to know, and Saint Nicholas is the patron saint of my family. Not only because we travel a lot, but there were a lot of children. Now there's a lot of grandchildren, and um, it's I can bore you silly with story. I think I may have bored you silly when we were together in Wales about the miracles of Saint Nicholas that I have witnessed in my own life.
Yeah.
And the great crime of Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Here we are, both looking pretty Santa Claus. You haven't got the beard thing going, but looking pretty Christmassy. Nicholas, incidentally, means the victory of the people, and is considered to be another name for Christ. As in Christ was, all of those working class people.
Exactly. Victory of the People is a very socialist name. I approve.
That's it. Well, he was all for the distribution of wealth. It was his own wealth. He didn't steal people and then give it to others. I'm not sure how that qualifies among socialists, but yes, he is a great saint. Anyway, so as the Orthodox say, it's not a feast of Saint Nicholas, but every day in a way is a feast of Saint Nicholas. May God grant you many years, and may you come to resemble your saint.
Thank you, John. That's an ambition to strive for. Now, usually we say for people who are coming straight to this video because it's their favorite book, we'll explain what we're doing. So we finished the books, so I'm still going to explain what we're doing, just in case somebody's pressed the wrong button and wonders what on earth we are doing. So we are celebrating J.K. Rowling's 60th birthday. That is known in Japan as the Kanreki, and it's a very important birthday because their calendar consists of the 12 astrological animals and the 5 Chinese elements, and they cycle round in a calendar of 60 years. So J.K. Rowling is a wood snake. She was born in the year of the wood snake.
Nick! Oh my God, okay.
Those who followed along may know a deeper significance to that. This is also the year of the wood snake. So J.K. Rowling is now at the point of the calendar where she came in. So it's the time for her rebirth, her second life. Hence the very important Japanese celebration of the Kanreki. Now, one of the things they do in Japan to celebrate this is they have a costume, a ridiculous costume with a red beret type thing, and they wear white clothes and
it's not a beret, it's a bonnet.
It's a bonnet. Now, John suggested that it would be a good idea if we got ourselves some red hats to go along with this. Now, unfortunately, the Kanreki bonnets that I've managed to find won't ship to the UK. But I thought
they are available in the US, but you'd have to save up for 60 years to get the whole package. I was not ready to do that, and it is inappropriate because we're not turning 60. I'm well over. You're still well under, and So, but we should wear red hats just as part of the party.
Now, who do we know wears a red hat? Apart from
Donald Trump and
Donald Trump. Donald Trump wears a red hat.
That's right.
Red baseball cap.
That's right. And it is kind of it's sort of like wearing a facial mask, like you're still concerned about COVID. The red hat and the blue mask in the United States are markers for red and blue political zealotry.
Okay.
So I don't think I can wear the "Make America Great Again" hat here because
Okay.
that will trigger too many people, Nick. But who else do we know? So there's Santa Claus, there's Donald Trump. I mean, you got to love him or hate him there.
Yes.
What are we going to do? Who else do we know that wears a red hat?
Well, who do we know who was a monkey and turned into a suit?
Oh my goodness!
Everybody's favorite Royal Military policeman.
Oh my! Oh
wow! Now look at this. Now, I warn you, John. When I edit this video, I'm going to have a screenshot just of me in the military police beret. This is the first bit of strike merchandise I have ever purchased. I look on Twitter and these wonderful, wonderful fans there, Bill from Strike Fans and Iris and Sue and Badly Wild Lamp and the whole crowd. They have the photographs of these cabinets and bookshelves filled with the wonderful things they've collected. I haven't seen anyone with the Royal Military Police hat.
Well, because it's fraud, you nasty military impersonator, you. And it's also the Queen's insignia there, isn't it? I mean,
well, you have an eye for detail. So the core of the Royal Military Police, their cap badge is the Royal Cipher. So right now, that would be C3R, Charles III Rex. However, when Strike was serving, the Queen was still alive. So I have opted for the old cap badge. This is with E2R on it. Now, normally, you're right. More so in the US, but also more increasingly in the UK, impersonating being a serviceman or an ex-serviceman is frowned upon. It's called, in the US, it's called stolen valor. In the UK,
valor, buddy. You pinned it.
In the UK, it's referred to as Walter Mitty, being a Walter. So that is Walter Mitty, the film character who lived in this imaginary universe. However, I'm reliably informed by people I know that are still serving that you can't be a Walter for the Royal Military Police, because who would pretend to be in the Royal Military Police? So
that's too good.
The other thing I'm advised is you don't just get a beret and stick it on your head. Not unless you want people to take the mickey out of you. You have to spend at least 2 days forming it. So you get it really wet and you mold it to your head and you get the shape right. This arrived today. So people who are serving, I apologize for the dreadful shape of my beret, but this is straight from the stores.
Okay, that seriously very, very impressive. I went on as soon as I heard that you were in the market for one of these. I tried to get a red cap from the United States Marine Corps because that would not be stolen valor. That's very much on brand. That's my thing. When I wear a shirt like this, I think, wow, here I am. This is my yellow face and my red shirt. I'm doing the Marine Corps thing. I'm not quite looking the part in terms of I don't think there's any Marines ever that have had this much beard. I don't think that the guys who were at Chosin Reservoir in Korea at 40 below let their beards grow out this long. But anyway, I'm more of the Santa Claus school right now than the Marine Corps school. But I went online to find a Marine Corps hat, Nick, and because this is the 250th anniversary of the United States Marine Corps this year.
Wow!
So the Green Gun Club is in full color this year. The Army's already done theirs because they actually are like 6 months older than we are, because they didn't get it right. We got it, we took our 6 months and got it right. But anyway, that's always true of the Army. But I shouldn't say that. The Marine Corps is always there first, and then the Army comes in and stabilizes the thing. That was a popular T-shirt when I was in the Marine Corps. Was after the FedEx thing, when it absolutely positively has to be destroyed overnight. The United States Marine Corps. Anyway, I was not combat arms. I was a communications technician, otherwise known in the Marine Corps as a POG. But so be it. I went through all the training and did all those things, but I did manage to find the generic red ball cap.
Oh, wow. There we are.
This I think is what most people would be wearing at an actual Kanreki. If they had a Kanreki party and everybody had to wear a hat, it would be a ball cap like this. The Marine Corps caps, and they're, Nick, I don't know where you found that thing, because that's a real find. I mean, that's seriously. I looked for one of those in the United States, and no, it ain't happening. Everything would have to come from the UK, and again, I didn't have my 60 years savings to put towards it. But the Marine Corps caps, this 1775, I could have gotten my rank insignia on the side. There's the whole thing, but it starts at $30, and wow. Then just goes out. I was just like, okay, not happening for this thing. So instead, I got this. I don't know how I have to wear this hat. You went through all your things about how you do that, how you wear your hat. I think I'm just gonna. Well, it's America in the 21st century.
So there we are. Youth culture.
I should conform to not. This is non-conformist conformity.
Yeah.
We're all wearing our hats backwards, aren't we? Non-conformists. You know what non-conformist means? Anyway, I did take a blood oath at one point. I would never wear my hat backwards. So there's that. And plus I have these lights. Anyway, very, very exciting, Nick. We finally have the proper clothing for our lake and shed things. Now, the reason we're doing the lake and shed thing is because of Rowling's metaphor about how she writes, that she gets her inspiration from what she calls the lake, which is something from within her, really. It's her subconscious mind. It's her experiences. It's all the books that she's read. It's her key relationships. It's the crises in her life, some unresolved issues that bubble up from the springs of her lake. Thank you, Ed Charlotte, for the springs image. We're gonna just totally drop pillars and buoys and go to springs. And then she takes this molten glass type blob and she carries it over to her shed, where it's a nice, and frankly, she has a nicer shed than I do. But she takes it into her shed. And there she uses her tools, her traditional tools. There are 7 of those. And then she weaves in the golden threads that run through everything that she's written. And if we take what's in the silkworm, we know that those are the tropes that the author really wants the people to be thinking about. Some of those tropes have obvious roots in the lake, some not so obvious. And then we have the 5 core themes, which correspond almost exactly with the 5 core beliefs coming out of the lake. Now, that we've been talking, Nick, for more than 3 weeks about her works, and just you would take a lake point, I would take a shed point. We'd chat for an hour, out we go. Now we're in the last week of the Kanreki celebration, the month-long celebration here. And we're kind of scrambling. But fortunately, we had somebody in the comment boxes, and boy, we're getting a flood of comments now. I can't tell you how much that means. Turn on the email, and there's a flood of comments in here. We haven't been responding. It's because this last week is a lot more work than look at a book, open it up. Oh yeah, we'll talk about that. Now I've got to come up with the first thing, when I asked for help this last week, someone said, how about those golden threads, John? Those 12 golden threads you mentioned in the first episode. And so I thought, okay, what are those 12 golden threads? I've never actually listed. So I listed them, and so Marabla Dictu, Nick, there were 14, 2 times 7. We could do this with our magic numbers. We can play pickleball here with our things. Now yesterday we did 8 of these, right? We did 4 back and forths.
Yeah.
So we only have 6 left. We have time for these silly hat games. So what are we up to here? Are you next, or am I up? Or
so I interrupted you when you were about to pick golden thread for me. One
for you. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna go with the thread that she said out loud. She hasn't said many of these out loud. There's been no pregnancy trap flag waving, but she did when she came to the United States for the open book tour, and Canada. She was asked, do you have any messages for your young fans? And she said, don't trust the government or the media. Well, you've already covered the media one. Nick, I think. The Fleet Street trap.
Yeah.
Now, I want to hear the government. I want to hear about the golden thread of the evil government. And I'm going to give you a gimme here. I want you to include the arm of the government. I want you to include the police force.
Okay. Okay. So you're going to ask the socialist the political question, eh?
Take that.
Okay.
Yeah, take my money to give it away? Okay, Nick. You go. What are you doing with that money in the government? My goodness.
So we can see in all her works. Let's start at the beginning. So the Ministry of Magic in Harry Potter before the fall. So this is before the forces of darkness and fascism take over. The government before the fall is not a benevolent government. So it is a government that far too frequently governments fall into is that their role is to generate governance rather than the good of the people. So you have a ministry that is denying the reports of Voldemort coming back, not because they don't believe it, it's because they think if they admit it, then the government will fall. And again, their role as they see it is the continuance of their government rather than the good of the people. The use of the auras, essentially, again, still before the fall, is there to uphold the government. So they are the strong arm of the government, and we see that when they try to foolishly apprehend Dumbledore. They're there as the strong arm of the government. Obviously, when the government falls, it's infiltrated by Voldemort's followers. Then you have basically it's the same but writ large. So now, rather than the aim of the government is the continuance of the government, they now have the rallying call of the government is for Voldemort. And it so happens that Voldemort is an evil dude, but it doesn't matter. Essentially, it's the government of personality. So they are government's people. It is Voldemort's institution. Bureaucracy. So again, a symptom of a government that is there to perpetuate its governance is a bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy is the legitimacy. So the more rules that they can implement and enforce, the more legitimate their rule is. And we can see that with Umbridge when she is parachuted into Hogwarts and all these educational decrees that are nailed up specifying.
But even the good characters. I mean, the Weasley family survives because of the Ministry of Muggle Artifacts.
Yes.
And Percy gets involved with, cauldron bottom legislation.
Yes.
I mean, this is.
And even Arthur, so he's writing or drafting legislation. He doesn't enact it, but he drafts the legislation with just enough loopholes that he can do what he wants to do. But it's the bureaucracy is its own legitimacy. So if a rule or a law has been passed, that means necessarily it must be good.
So you're telling me the golden thread so far is that government is not only, incompetent and bumbling and stupid, but it's evil. That it's self-perpetuating. It confuses its own existence with the good of the people. I mean, well, that's a pretty treasonous statement there, Nicholas.
Well, if I'm going to get more treasonous. So far, it's quite treasonous. But we need to think about, again, from my Lake perspective, where Rowling was in her own politics when she was writing Harry Potter. Lifelong socialist, God bless her. But she was enough politically switched on of a socialist to understand the dangers of of government and the dangers of big government. Nothing like the dangers of fascism. So she portrayed that very well. And she, although she doesn't show us in the story, she gives us hope off camera. So we know that Hermione goes into government and that she does good things for the house elves, although not, it sounds like, abolish the institution, but she does things for elvish welfare when she's in government, all off camera. So I don't think certainly at this point in her political understanding, she's ready to say all government is bad, but she has written large, government can be bad. And just because it's the government doesn't mean necessarily you should trust it. When we move on to strike, she's a bit more, again, nuanced. I think still with the main theme of just because it's the government doesn't mean it's good. And we can look at Lethal White of a real government in action. So this was set at the time of the coalition government of the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. And we have a close-up of a government minister and a Liberal Democrat minister. And neither of them really are written very sympathetically in terms of these are politicians who have the best interests of the people at heart. You have Chisel, who at least is very open about his position, that I am here for Chisel and Chisel interests are good for the country. Therefore, what is good for me is good for the country. Did some very disreputable things, but they were all within the law at the time that they were done. Lots of backstabbing, lots of surreptitious scrabbling about for political advantage. But I think no less Della Wynne, certainly Della's husband, but no less Della herself is, although politically there's a lot of difference between her and Chisel, actually, and she has this charity which she's allowed, well, not allowed, but at least her husband has mismanaged to a criminal degree, doesn't seem to bother her quite so much as the loss of her own position when all of this threatens to come out. So we have the super injunction. Yeah, the super injunction is to conceal what has happened. Marvelous for the Americans. The super injunction is a marvelous British institution that looks like it's almost on its last legs. It's used less and less these days, but this is an injunction
as an affront to the entire English, legal tradition. Yeah, one hopes that it's on its way out.
So this is an injunction. So if it looks like a newspaper or some other organ has got hold of a story that it can't demonstrate is absolutely true, but could do immense or measurable harm to someone, you can take out an injunction. You can't print this. And the High Court judge will look at the evidence and go, on balance of probabilities, no, you can't say that unless you can come back and give me a lot more evidence that this is true. That's an injunction. A super injunction means you're not even allowed to report that somebody's taken out an injunction. Just sort of falls into an informational black hole. And even myself as a private citizen, fortunately, nobody ever listens to me. Thank you guys that are actually listening to me. But if I,
I'm one.
Yeah. If I said something that was under the auspices of a super injunction, I could be guilty of contempt of court. So it's not just newspapers, it's anyone. And anyway, they seem hugely unpopular. Of course, they're unpopular with the press, but they seem generally unpopular with the population.
Where are those authentic journalists that say, oh, you want to try me for contempt of court? Well, I feel nothing but contempt for the court. So let me say these things. And if there were 50 of them, it would explode the entire adventure.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, this is a failing of courage. But let's go on, Nick. We have this.
How far have I got? Okay, so So the third one is the political fairy tale. So this is the Ichabod, which I do need to reread. But this is basically politics for children. So this is J.K. Rowling brainwashing our kids into her own form of socialism, which is basically that unaccountable government is a bad thing. Unelected bureaucrats are a bad thing, and republicanism, anti-monarchy. Do I think J.K. Rowling is a Republican? I should say J.K. Rowling, OBE, Companion of Honor, is a Republican. No, no, I don't. I think the UK has that special form of monarchy, a constitutional monarchy, to the point that our monarch is powerless pretty much. So we can respect our sovereign anointed by God, without blaming our sovereign for very much in the way of poor decisions and power improperly wielded. Actually, the sovereign still wields considerable power in the UK, but by convention they never exercise it. And I think that the vital to the future of the monarchy is that continues to happen.
We do know that Rowling's mother was passionate about the royals.
Yes,
and that she would have been thrilled beyond measure that Rowling has received these honors, to have been listed.
Yeah.
And we saw at the Queen's repose, memory eternal, that she put quite a few things on Twitter about what this meant, because she certainly couldn't remember a time when Queen Elizabeth was nothing. I mean, no one of your generation can remember that time.
And that's not just poor memory. So she ascended to the throne in 1952, and that's beyond almost everyone's lifespan.
Yeah. I have a good friend who was born in 54. So anyway, but still, yeah. I mean, in terms of coherent memory, that's our parents' generation that would remember that. So I remember my father telling me about when Franklin Roosevelt died in 1945. My father was born in November, actually on election day of 1932. He was born on the day that Franklin Roosevelt became president. And he said when Roosevelt's death was announced, and there's a NBC at the time was the leading broadcasting network. They had prepared this orchestral composition that was played for hours on that day as the backdrop to almost everything that happened. And my dad says if he hears the opening notes to that music, the only classical music he recognized, because it happened on this searing day, he said he really felt like almost as if his father had died, because he had no experience of any other president then. So, quite a thing in the UK when the Queen. Anyway, other than this beneficent monarch, government is really not to be trusted. And they make jokes about royals. You have time for me or the Queen or whatever. Polwarth likes to strike the Mickey about the Queen. All right. Well, you've passed your test. No comments about the police though. The Met has to be in there somewhere, right?
Yes.
One scene in Strike, I think, where the Met is shown as in any kind of sympathy, outside of Vanessa Quincy and stuff, is in Lethal White. They get their moment of collaboration with that may be a pointer to the end of the whole series. But besides that, wow, the police and Stryker on they bring him in, they all but beat him up. It's
I mean, you have to remember that there's also in the Strike series that there is professional competition between Strike and the Met, and I think felt more by the Met than it is by Strike, just because Strike is so successful. I mean, if we want absolute and unjustified disdain for the Met, then we have to go to Dave Polworth, who agreed to basically risk his life, hell's mouth, searching for a typewriter purely to show up the Metropolitan Police.
Did it? It's great. One of the great scenes. All right. So it's your turn.
Okay, so I saw it on the list, and I know you've spoken about this before, but I will jest that one of the golden threads you've identified strikes me as strange for a writer of fiction. So Joe, who makes stuff up for a living, has a golden thread of searching for the real. What do you mean by that, John?
That's a great question. Is this a real golden thread, Nick?
Yeah.
Well, we don't. Well, we have all the false narratives inside the Harry Potter novels, and then at the end, what is real is revealed, usually in Dumbledore's office or the hospital wing or something, and we get what is real inside the story. With the fabula, it all comes together. We talked about the Shazette and the fabula, but the false narrative is dispelled and the real is spelled out, and we get the sequence of events snaps to in our heads, and wow, what an event that is. And we feel like, oh, that's what's real. But the biggest Dumbledore denouement, of course, is really before the climax of Deathly Hallows, where Harry and Dumbledore meet and they have this conversation, and they're really talking about what's real inside that. What's going on, what's most important about how Harry's going to deal with these things, what's happened in his life and such. And they're actually at the point, this is in Deathly Hallows lectures, but this is that nexus of the cross. This is the center of the circle. This is the fabric of reality moment. Harry is in Logos land. He can see now without his glasses. Dumbledore is radiant. He's filled with this light of the world. And they see things as they are. But in the last moment there, Harry, who has always gotten it wrong until the end of the books, and here he is about to come back to life and confront the Dark Lord. He asks him, is this real or is this just in my head? And Dumbledore, I think he laughs because, do you really ask your delusion if you're real or not? I mean, what kind of testimony do you expect from your delusion if this is a delusion? But he says, of course, it's happening inside your head, Harry, but why would you think that's not real? This is, the Logos is within you. The kingdom of heaven, this Basileia, this is the ruling power, is this Logos. Why would you think that's not real? That's really who you are. That's your power, idiot, And so Harry goes back, and sure enough, does the dance of death in the great hall with the Dark Lord, calls him to remorse, calls him to repentance, calls him to the center of the circle, because he's seen where the Dark Lord is going to wind up with that soul fragment, at King's Cross. And that's, Rowling said she waited 17 years to write those lines. That is it real or is it in my head? And that's really the foundation of the series. Now that makes sense in terms of her artistry about revealing the real. That she's trying to get us to be thinking about narratives and how to understand what's really going on. You have to use the Austen word, you have to penetrate. You have to have some sort of penetration through story and to see that all lives are story, and that human beings are the storytelling animal. You have to get at what's real. That's what the alchemy is about. That's what the chiasm is about, is to find the meaning in the middle. It's certainly what the depictive psychology is about. The psychomachia is always about seeing the soul and the spirit, what is most real. And it seemed to just stop there. It's like, okay, so that was really important, and it was she didn't really say, here's what my book means, but she told us that those epigraphs at the start of Deathly Hallows, she told us that those scripture citations, those were really important, and she told us that scene at King's Cross and the walk into the forest again, those were really meaningful. She's giving us the sight lines. And if you line all those things up, you get that King's Cross moment as the critical. What is real? What has the most being on that ontology ladder? Well, and then we get in Strike, we get two conversations about the real. One is where Strike says that astrology, none of it is effing real. Says, it's all bullocks. And this was a real affront to Robin, who is quite taken with astrology. It seems, and she's dabbles her sun sign at least, and so we know she's playing with the Aleister Crowley tarot cards because she's trying to understand the true book. And they spend the whole book trying to understand that astrological chart about the time and date and place of Margot Bamborough's disappearance. And so Strike's saying none of it's real. And then he describes his own astrological chart, which pins him to the wall. He admits it and then says there's nothing in it. It's all fake. And at the end of this, they'll always decide, that it was all in the astrological chart. Well, it is all in the astrological chart. That's the part that's just so much fun about this book, is that I don't know how Rowling did it. I had to assume that she made the chart and then wrote the story from the chart, because it would be too hard to have written the story and then found the place, in Clerkenwell where this actually did. That's going to be an interesting question. If she ever grants an interview with somebody who knows her stories about, how she drew those images and cast that chart. But more important, in the Strike stories, there's the Carrie Woods interview about Dayu's death. Carrie Woods is the young woman that carried what was supposedly Dayu to the beach, and it was actually just part of Abigail Glover's plan. It's just a seaweed doll or straw doll, and he takes her out in the water, and the straw disappears. But Carrie Woods, this haunts her because she knows that she was party to a murder, that Dayu is being fed to pigs back on the farm, and butchered. This has haunted her, especially after she has her own children. She says this death of a child haunts her. That's also a golden thread, right? The death of a child. Think of someone. But Carrie Wood says repeatedly, as she breaks down in front of Robin and Strike in her interview, this was real. This was real. This was real. And Strike, who has his suspicions that what she was doing was not real, kept saying, what was real? What was real? She's like, she died. This person died. Now, she was offering it as if Dayu had gone out in the water and drowned. But she was really saying, I was complicit in this conspiracy to murder Dayu. But there we are, the critical point in that novel, having this conversation again about the real, and Strike saying, what do you mean by what do you mean by real here? And that brings us to the Blue Bunny. And I'm not sure if I think the Blue Bunny came out after Troubled Blood. Am I right there?
Yes, after.
Yeah, because the Blue Bunny, we get the most positive and clear statement about what's real. That's where the Blue Bunny outside of the gates of the, what is it, misplaced.
Yes.
And the loss adjusters are guarding these gates, and Christmas Pig and Jack can't figure out how to get in. The Blue Bunny starts asking embarrassing questions like, why do you really want to get in there? What, is it just about having a nicer place to live? Because he's in the land of the I always want to say the Slav despond, or
the land of the lost.
He's in the land of the lost, certainly, but he's in that area outside of any of the cities where the loser prowls.
Yeah.
So Blue Bunny and his girlfriend are very much at risk of dying at any moment. And he has no access to any of these cities. So he's trying to figure out why his friends, who seem to be, really pretty chill guys, they really, why is it so urgent for them to get inside the city? And Jack answers this question truthfully. He's real for once. he says, I've got this, my favorite toy is inside that city, and I have to find him because he means that much to me. And the Blue Bunny says, and all of a sudden, he has his fabulum. He says, "Oh, wait a minute, it's all coming together here. You're not just a very well carved toy. You're real," he says. You're a boy. And this causes CP to go off, oh, no, he's an action toy, he's an action figure. And he says, I get it. He says, you're real. It would be an honor for me to act as your decoy. And he goes out in this act of spontaneous sacrificial love for a boy that has sacrificed, his life among the living to be in the land of the lost. Basically the incarnation, to die for Christ. He does a Dobby, basically. I'm going to do this. And so he goes out and he does somersaults, and he's distracting the lost adjusters. And I'm sure CP is saying, that ain't going to cut it. But then the skies open. A finding hole opens above them. And the real, the very real appears, and it's the love of the mother. A love of specifically the love of a child for a toy, which is the displacement of, it's the child acting as a mother to this figure. And Jeannie, giving us that prologue to John touch, loves the thing, and Blue Bunny is taken up into the heavens, which is the decoy, which allows CP in the city. At that moment of, you is what Rowling is saying, is that this Johannine love, fabric of reality, is what's real. Now we have another moment of that, which is more in the shed side, because not in the lake side, because it comes from Casual Vacancy, and that's Fat's wall and his pursuit of authenticity. He's searching for what's real, and he gets. And it's interesting. He's kind of the alchemist of that book, because when he goes into the cave with his buddy, the Price boy, Andrew Price, they form an Ouroboros. They go head to foot, and then when he first has sex, I don't want to say makes love, because it's just a function of having sex with Crystal Whedon, the king and queen of the story really make love over the grave of Barry Fairbrother, which of course freaks Crystal out. But that's an alchemical trope, that sex over the grave of the hero. Now that's he's longing for authenticity, and he's blind to what's real. He tortures the young Sikh girl. He's a vindictive, nasty, self-important. You fill in your pejorative. That because they all fit. They all fit for Fat's wall. Uses and abuses people, and then he's confronted finally with what's real. We have that what in the United States we call a come to Jesus moment, where his mother says, "Let me tell you about the facts of your life that you've never asked me in your search for authenticity. You've never asked me about why we adopted you. Never asked me about your birth mother. Never asked me about why your father is the way he is. Well, here it is. Here it is, you who have effectively murdered this young boy." And it all falls away. All of the, it's like the scene in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, when the dragon scales all fall off of that boy with the dreadful name. What's the boy with the dreadful name?
I can't remember.
That scene where he's exposed as a dragon, and then is, all falls away from him, and he realizes he's a humble, pathetic nothing. Whose only chance for survival is remorse. And he takes that on. He takes on responsibility for everything. Basically, I am the ghost of Barry Fairbrother. Nobody else is responsible. That's me. One of the most moving scenes in her things. It's very confusing, unless you understand the alchemical purification and stuff like that. But again, the context of a golden thread, that's the real happening. I don't know if they use the word real in there. I have to go back to my copy of Casual Vacancy, but that's
I think it suggests it with that reflection of authenticity, and I think that spoke to Fats, because when he uses that term authenticity, it seems to imply that nothing is real unless it's causing discomfort and pain. And so when his mother gives him a dose of the real and he feels that pain and discomfort, that speaks to him. And I think that was his one chance. That was his one chance to realize what was going on. And thankfully he took it.
Yeah, to realize speaks to this capacity being there.
Yeah.
That and in the lake side of that, I think Rowling has that moment at some point in her life, where she was coasting along and she was imagining herself as a writer, and then she has something that just totally breaks her. Now, part of that, I'm sure, was her mother's death. Part of that was the agony in Portugal. Part of that was the humiliating being brought to ground in the UK as a single mom. But there was something before that, or we don't get Harry Potter. There must have been something closer to her youth, or her Exeter experience, or post-Exeter, that I think is what Fats Wall experiences there, and what you describe as really the psychological revelation. That cognitive behavior moment where you say, "Oh, that's a belief that isn't doing me any good at all," and yet I think of it. I look through that lens every day. I have to discard that. Search for the real is a real Lake and Shed moment. We haven't quite found out all the lake elements, but in the Shed, wow, it runs through as an important thing. And that's just 3 or 4 that I pulled out. It really is in almost everything. There's always a revelation of what's really going on inside this book. All right, Nick, it's your turn, buddy. You're up.
Okay.
This is great. You chose a real. I'm gonna throw you a Shed, ball here. This is not quite tricky like the socialist thing there. I noticed you left out all the mentions of that horrible socialist experiment in Germany and the even worse socialist experience in the Soviet Union. But that's great. You wanted to describe that German socialist experience as fascism, when that was really the Italian side.
No, I know. Hitler was only trying to make Germany great again.
That's touche. He says. Did he put tariffs on the UK? Anyway, she said that Trump is worse than Voldemort. Is Trump also worse than Hitler? Hitler never put tariffs on the UK.
That's true. Right. That's true. I don't think he did.
Always the socialists apologizing for Hitler. All right, let's go with the occult. The occult.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
Astrology, tarot cards, and
yeah.
The obviously late component there. I mean,
yeah. So we know that Rowling has long been fascinated with the occult, specifically fortune telling. I hesitate to call it divination, but things like tarot cards, and we've got testimony of palm reading, and we know she's a very, very accomplished astrologer. I mean, most obviously, if we just for a moment leave to one side Sybil Trelawney, which is treated as a little bit of a joke, but
she's always right.
I know, but we go to the prophecies, and she has a very Greek idea of prophecies, which I find fascinating, in that the prophecies are always inevitable, like they've been pre-written in stone. But then when you study the mechanics of them, they're only inevitable because the hero hears the prophecy. The hero had not heard the prophecy, then they wouldn't have been inevitable. And that's exactly what happens to Voldemort. Voldemort essentially decides that the prophecy refers to Harry, and therefore he sets this train of events in motion, which inevitably brings about his own downfall. And Rowling has spoken about, well, if What if Voldemort had decided it was Neville? Would it still be inevitable? Well, we don't know, but the fact that he heard it, the fact that he decided it was Harry, inevitably led to his own comeuppance.
He of course does not hear it. That's one of his great frustrations.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, he hears about it and makes his interpretation, which also is classical. He bungles the interpretation. That's just. And
as John mentioned, so the divination classes are treated pretty much as a joke. And even down to the superstitions of the 13th at the table, but they always, when you look at it, they always come true. And we see this in Troubled Blood with the tarot readings. We see it with the astrology. They always seem to be telling us something that is actually happening in the story.
It's like the ghosts, isn't it? That there's an invisible greater reality.
Yes.
And there are passages to that greater reality. Like tarot decks are not traditional in the sense they've been handed down for millennia. They'll claim to be from Egypt, etc., but they're really like they're high Middle Ages type events. But those cards and the astrological symbols and those glyphs, Chinese and Western symbols, they're pretty rich. And I want to talk. Anyway, the astrological thing is so like her characters, Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley. We know their birthdays. Wow, they conform at least to the sun sign type of that.
Yeah.
And Cormoran Strike, we know this. Because they gave us the rising sign, we actually know, really down to the hour when he was born, and everything about his thing. That's played out. I'm more interested in the tarot card stuff because, and we haven't. That work really hasn't been done yet.
No.
If we ever do a, paying subscribers, look at Talbert's True Book, that will be what we do. Is because I think I've said this before when we talked about Troubled Blood, but every one of the True Book illustrations has a 3-card tarot spread embedded in it. And to discern them and then to figure out the question that he was asking, which is the signifying card of the tarot thing, is such arcane artistry.
Yeah.
One gets it. Certainly those on the audiobooks don't get it, and anybody who doesn't spend time staring at those pictures at length, really meditating on them with that tarot deck in hand and with guides to that tarot deck to figure, it's those pictures are like 5 chapters each in terms of like the text that's embedded inside of them, and it's never been read. I mean, I've done some of that work, but it's so demanding, and there's so little reward for serious strikers that they've avoided it. I mean, it's so much. It's like the chiastic structure thing. You got to be a nutter. You have to be a little nutter to actually say, okay, I'm going to see how far this goes.
But see, I think this speaks to Rowling's character. I think she's a nerd. She's a geek. She likes the complexity. She likes the charts and the patterns. She likes the fact that you have to really study it to know it. But I think if you ask,
she likes this so much. Did you get your invitation today? I went outside today and checked my mailbox. No invitation to the Kanreki blast for me.
No, well, it's missed it today, and of course it's Sunday tomorrow, so there's no post on a Sunday, as everyone knows. We'll have to wait to see what happens on Monday. But if you asked her, and I think people have asked her, do you believe in this stuff? Do you believe in astrology? No. But just like in her stories, I think she'd say, but it's funny how it always works out, isn't it? I think
she's cast horoscopes for all of her major characters. I mean, believe me, that's pretty wild. Wow. I mean, you just can't imagine Strike except exactly as she describes him. In terms of that.
but I think there's a little bit of playing as well. So I remember when Hogwarts Professor first blew the story of Solway et Coagula tattoo and what it means, we had our fair share in the Nutter Drawer. You know, we had the people, well, this proves J.K. Rowling is a devil worshipper. And then they brought out this we had
Baphomet statue.
pictures of Baphomet with Solway and Coagula written on his arms. Now that image of Baphomet was written by a chap called Elphias Levi, who was sort of an occultist. But Baphomet
sort of an occultist? No, yeah. Nick, full-fledged.
Well, yeah. But was it was fashionable at the time. But the term Baphomet is not ancient. It goes back to the time of the Templars, where it's first recorded, and it seems to be a corruption of Muhammad. But in the trial of the Templars, the Baphomet they talk about has no relation to a devil. It was just a disembodied head that they were supposed to be praying to. No mention of Solway, no mention of Coagula. This is really an 18th, 19th century invention. But we were getting a lot of really strange messages about that time, and then
most of which did not make it to the thread.
Most of which didn't, and then J.K. Rowling changed her header for the astrological chart of Aleister Crowley. And I thought, she's winding us up. Now she's winding us up. We're getting all of these messages claiming she's a devil worshipper. And she puts up, and I think we would either the first or one of the first sites to actually identify, no, that is Aleister Crowley's chart.
No, Nick, again, it's like the Solway Coagula tattoo. You were the one that identified the tattoo, and you were the one that were. How did you find that was Crowley's natal chart?
That nothing very clever at all. That was a very simple image search. So I just did an image search, came up with that natal chart, and you do a bit of due diligence. Is it exactly the same? All the stars and planets at the same location? Yeah, that's the chart. And then Troubled Blood comes.
No one else among serious strikers thought to do it. I mean, you drilled that one. I was like, wow, who is this guy?
And then Troubled Blood comes out. And as I'm flicking straight to the back so that I can check out the acknowledgements, it comes open at a drawing of Baphomet. Ah.
So well,
there's
really
your proof. No, I know. But there's your proof, John. So J.K. Rowling is a Hog Pro fan. She reads all the comments, especially from the letters.
Well, again, I'll have to say what all of those who live to keep me in my place will tell you is that we have no dispositive proof that Rowling has any idea that we exist. And as always, thank God for that. Because, whenever she opens her mouth and says something like, Snape is not a vampire, the whole thing closes down. You have all these fans that have accumulated all the evidence, everything that corresponds with Snape and vampires. And Rowling says he's not a vampire. So all the conversation about him being a half vampire, which is really credible, or his being a psychological vampire, which is a Jungian, topos. All that just disappeared overnight. No, can't be a psychological vampire, can't be a half vampire, can't be a real vampire because Rowling said he's not a vampire. Like, wow. Thank God she hasn't talked about the Christian content of the books, or that would have closed down.
That's the thing. That's the thing. If we were offered an interview, I mean, I would have to lock myself up in a dungeon to say no. But then there is the danger of her just going through the A to Z of Hog Pro, going no, well, maybe, but not like that. No.
which we can say, well, our mistakes. But why did we make those mistakes? One of the only times that she has corrected me, but not by name, was in my Hidden Key to Harry Potter. I said that Ginny Weasley was Virginia Weasley, because that's in the United States. I have a cousin named Virginia, who's always known as Ginny. I have a great aunt who's named Ginny, who's Virginia. And so I just, I said, that's what that means. And I talked about that remarkable scene in Chamber of Secrets where Harry goes down to rescue the Virgin and this kind of thing. Well, it was definitely one of the first inklings that we had that Rowling actually was reading these things. Was she almost immediately comes out and says her name is Ginevra. Yeah. In fact, it's an Arthur Guinevere thing. It's not this way. And then we found out that was actually tied to an Agatha Christie novel. So that was fascinating. But other than that kind of rebuke, and that she says she can't read, commentary because she once read a Christian analysis of the books, whatever, which I really have to hope is still Connie Neal. But anyway, it's just much more likely to be mine. Fine, Joanne, give us an interview. Let's talk about this stuff.
Well, let's tempt her in with a golden thread that she would never deny, and we know she has an absolute passion for: the embedded text.
Okay. You're bounce passing here back. And the embedded text thing is definitely a shed thing, though really it's a reflection of Rowling's own life. And I'm going to put down below a link to a guest post at Hogwarts Professor by a real wizard, David Martin, a friend to all of us in Potter punditry, and a star, too, a television star.
Yeah, anyone who's seen that American TV quiz show, then he's the star of that show.
That's right, and a true Hufflepuff. I mean, I'm so glad that he was in Hufflepuff. Well, David, besides being a brilliant man, one of the things he's a catalogist. So when you have a task, really, he's really what you want in the fourth generation scholarship team, because he goes back through books and just finds all these things. And one of the things he decided to do, and it's a post called Books Within Books, he went through and cataloged the 200 books that appear inside Harry Potter. In effect, Hermione doesn't go to the library. The library is all around her. Everything inside this school is about books that really come alive. And that's, this is Rowling's task. We talked about this just recently. Which book were we talking about, Nick, that we talked about this embedded text?
Troubled Blood, Aurora Lee. Not Troubled Blood. Ink Black Heart, Aurora Lee.
Okay. And Tycho Dodonis in Secrets of Dumbledore. I mean, almost every book has one of these texts.
Yeah.
It's that there's a book or a symbol or an idea, a narrative that everybody in the book is trying to figure out while you're trying to figure it out over their shoulder. So you're seeing readers trying to interpret a text or some kind of narrative or just a symbol. And they're showing you how to do it poorly, and they're showing you how to do it well. And you have to choose which way to do while you're interpreting the text. Now, that's most profoundly obvious in the foundational Cormoran Strike book, where everybody in the book is reading Bombyx Mori, which is kind of a secret text because it's hidden in safes, but everybody's got a copy of it somehow. And they're trying to figure out who stands for who and what the allegory is and the transparencies and what it's about. And then they're having to read the other books. They're having to read the Quine and the Fancourth and the Joe North books to figure out what they're saying. But really, a book within a book about books is the foundation. It was the first book of the Cormoran Strike series. I know it appears second, but Rowling says that was the conception novel. That's what Rowling is about. Is she's trying to get us as storytelling animals to understand the world as narrative and transparencies and symbols that bring us closer to what is real. And there are right ways and wrong ways to understand writing and reading. And she's illustrating them inside the books. Of all the golden threads, this may be my favorite, because there's so much great stuff. I mean, you have the Tales of Beedle the Bard and the climax novel of Harry Potter, in which there's this troublesome symbol that that a character named Granger is trying to, tease out. And she gets it wrong, which I think is Rowling's way of saying, John, I'm sorry, you just don't understand these books. But that's, again, that's absolutely the Gilderoy, diluted thing that Rowling knows who I am. But anyway, that book inside the book that wrote that Dumbledore gifts to Hermione, who has no idea if these stories exist. Now, Ron, he knows those stories. He has them by heart. If he heard those stories, it would be parody or satire because everybody in the wizarding world knows them so well. You'd have to do some kind of fractured fairy tale to make it engaging again for people like Ron. But to Hermione, it's all fresh and new. It's all defamiliarizing in a different way than it would be for Ron. And she still doesn't get it right. She can't recognize, the Deathly Hallows. Even though she's been hiding with Ron and Harry at midnight, going through Hogwarts underneath the invisibility cloak, she just can't recognize that that's one of those things. So, that's to me that's the most thing. But there's other stuff inside there. There's the half-blood prince thing. My son freaked out when he realized that the reason Madame Pince was so upset about seeing the Half-Blood Prince textbook is because it's hers, and she's furious that he's got it and is drawn all these pictures. She just doesn't know that her son Severus Snape had done all these things. Anyway, that's again fan fiction, but fun. There's Hogwarts, a history. There's just so many books inside the books that are relevant to the story and how you read them. Like Hermione basically, has to come to the, first she quotes Hogwarts, a history, like the first 3 or 4 books. And she's always, why won't you read this book? It has all this important information. It's where Salazar Slytherin in the Chamber of Secrets, etc. And then in Lethal White, in Goblet of Fire, she says, they should call it Hogwarts, Hogwarts Miss History. What does she call it?
Oh, yeah, I forget.
She just throws the book aside because it never mentions the house elves. It's a false text. It's a regime narrative, and we have to ignore all of it. Now is rubbish. So what if she hasn't memorized? Anyway, the next, Bombyx Mori, we've talked about that. To me, the most important book inside a book is Talbot's True Book. It's in Rowling's best book, best novel in a series, at least, other than maybe Deathly Hallows. And that she took the genre to entirely different levels with that. Her retelling not only of the male and female knight that are in battle, but also of the Red Cross Knight and Una. And she does those simultaneously inside the book. Absolutely mind-boggling. And inside that book, there's a book of a man's fever-dreamed illustrations of tarot card spreads he did to try to solve the case. And it's the True Book, which is, she could have called it the real book, because he's really looking for what's real here. And it's nothing that anybody will recognize as true or real. It just seems to be, bullocks, as Strike would say. None of that is effing real. But instead, you get these illustrations inside this. It's not only a text, because there's writing all over those illustrations, to include Solway at Coagula. That's the only place that appears inside Rowling's work, is in one of those illustrations. And that text inside the text, they never really get a grip on. Strike only comes to terms with the naked woman who is, it's actually Margot Bamborough, but she appears in the form of the woman in Revelations, with the 7-headed steed, and I'm missing her name. This is for all those out there that think that we compare all these things in real detail.
It's not Lilith.
No. Again, in the comment boxes,
Yeah.
You guys, you put things like True Book, like we stumbled for True Book. You didn't beat us up. You just put True Book, John. Um, they spell this woman's name differently in Crowley's work. Anyway, really important to the story. But Strike doesn't spend any time with those illustrations. He spends all his time with the astrological chart. Well, that's good because there's a lot of information in the astrological chart, certainly. But Talbot invested himself much more in those illustrated pages, obviously. He talks about, he does all these things with the 14 sign astrological charts, but really it's the tarot deck and his trying to beat. Strike never even tries to figure out the Celtic Cross tarot spread, which has the answer in it. Oh, I mean that's all. It's all good. It's all good, but it shows how we're supposed to look at that text and interpret it. And Strike shows us how not to interpret that text. He thinks it's all bullocks, and yet he's spending all his time with the astrological chart. He forgets all the charts that were so painstakingly, except for the words. He misses all the symbols, all the transparencies, and that's where the answers are. And that's, I think, what she's talking to us. Is, look for the anagogical level. Look for the icons, if you will. Certainly, those images from Crowley's tarot deck are not icons in the Orthodox Christian sense of iconography, but they are, iconographic or kind of logical in that they're transparencies to what she would call archetypal reality, and certainly the Orthodox would also do to that. But this is where the reader is meant to engage. And Nick, what percentage of readers do you think actually engage at that level consciously?
Oh, consciously? Tiny.
Yeah, minuscule. I mean, people that read our website, that is because even in Strike fandom, this is not really a subject.
Oh.
And these people are really consumed by it. I mean, I haven't seen anybody with a Cormoran Strike sleeve tattoo yet, like you do with Harry Potter. But they're coming. They're coming, Nick.
I've got the hat now, so I may be going all in.
I feel like such a pathetic pretender here with my red cap. Anyway, I would add that Rowling, in her frustration with the Fantastic Beasts series, included the predictions of Tycho Dodonus because she wanted some semblance of what she's about to happen there. And there you had a poetic prediction that, of course, is misunderstood. Nobody really understands about Corvus Lestrange V and Aurelius Dumbledore, but he seems to get it. Tycho Dodonus seemed to get it. It does work if you have the answers. So the embedded text, if you don't have to go through David Martin's 200 texts. Most of those are funny titled texts. That's fine. But you do want, if you understand Rowling, you have to find the embedded narrative from that chocolate frog card to what's the embedded text of Running Grave? Is it the UHC's Bible? Is it
I Ching?
The I Ching? Yeah, I think I have to go with the I Ching. So yeah, it's. But then again, the dead center of it has Hindu scripture and Christian scripture, which I think are supposedly quoted inside the UHC. Abigail Glover's Crazy Fathers, guide for righteous living there. All right, so I've done extra shed duty there. Your turn. Oh, 5 done embedded texts. How about embedded authors there, Wild Man? Give me some.
That's all Lake. This is all Lake, of course.
That's right. That's back to you here.
So J.K. Rowling seems to want to write herself into everything she writes, but she bases a persona based on what she was like 20 to 25 years before. I think this gives us a bit of a gap, and it allows the author to make her avatar make mistakes without reflecting directly on us. So Harry Potter, we have Hermione Granger, self-admitted by the author. This is, lots of weasel words, loosely based on the child I was as a young
Okay, I'm going to break in here.
Okay.
Harry Potter has her birthday. Harry Potter has her eyes. Harry Potter is, a boy in a small house with an ambitious father who lives under the stairs, and is the less favored child or whatever. I mean, he's got to be the embedded author as much as Hermione is.
That's all very Lakey, and I'm sure there's shades of that in there. But Harry Potter is the hero, and J.K. Rowling.
He's a Gothic heroine. Everything he does, he's a young woman. I mean, Travis Pinsey and I drilled this independently and simultaneously when studying Gothic stuff, that Harry Potter is a Gothic heroine. I remember the conversation with Travis that we were having this,
I know, and I agree, but J.K. Rowling never sees herself. When she embeds herself, she never sees herself as the hero. She's always the sidekick.
Okay, prove that.
You doubt me. You doubt me. So we have when she's writing Harry Potter, a young girl, 20 to 25 years younger than she is, Hermione Granger. Annoyingly swotty. It's how she saw herself at that age. Casual Vacancy. We have an older teenager, Andrew Price. Again, he's the sidekick.
The fast, yeah.
The Strike series, Robin Ellicott. 20 to 25 years younger than Rowling was when she was writing Silkworm, Cuckoo's Calling. Temp in London. Strawberry blonde hair, which is the hair color J.K. Rowling likes to think she has. Certainly.
She's admitted she has no idea what it is.
No, I know. So, but if we look at the early photographs, sort of strawberry blondie kind of color before she goes for the full redhead. That's how she sees herself and always the sidekick. But I'm sure there's bits of her character comes out all over the place, because when you're writing anyone's interior thoughts, the only interior thoughts we've got any experience of are ourselves. So I'm sure she comes out in lots of places. There occasionally she comes out explicitly. So in the earlier Harry Potter books, there's the authorial asides, which become rarer as we go through the series. You remember after the battle with the troll, then there's I paraphrase.
There are some experiences that you can't help but be friends afterwards.
Yes, lovely, wonderfully mirrored with the grave digging party in Cormoran Strike, when you see Robin and Barclay becoming closer, because you can't go digging for bodies without forming some sort of a bond. We have, and I was looking. I need to reread Ichabod, but there's an even more explicit authorial aside in Ichabod, where the narration stops for a bit, because the author wants to tell you something before the story picks on again, and then the most explicit, which is in Christmas Pig, where it's not so much an authorial aside, but J.K. Rowling herself breaks in through the clouds and says basically, "No, Ginny, leave it alone." So it is that. It's one of the things that J.K. Rowling loves to do. It's always fun, I think, to try and spot who are you in this book 20 to 25 years ago, and who are you the psychic to this time.
Well, are you done, or am I going to have? I'm going to jump in the lake here. I'm going to put my water. I've already jumped in the lake and said, "What? Harry Potter is J.K. Rowling." I mean, you're the one who talked about the small house, with the manor on the hill and the crazy parents and the one extra sibling, and he's the dead thing. Wow, there we have it, right there. You drilled that, and the birthday is the same. His Kanreki, well, he's not a wood snake. Do we know what Harry
wrong
Potter is?
year. No, we're going to have to find out, though, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And I think he and Hermione, to borrow the sextrology, polarity, are the Rowling as the, because she really understood herself as like a young man inside, as a young woman, and very uncomfortable with her female identity. So I he is a Gothic heroine. She's writing a Gothic parody. I think she's there. More though, something I've been talking about for years, and I'm just shocked and hurt, Nick, that you didn't include this, is that she's Sybil Trelawney. That the goofy French teacher of the schoolboy novel, especially schoolgirl novels, is taken up by this professor of divination who everybody laughs at. And she drinks a little bit too much, and nobody ever asks her out, and she's consumed by astrology and divination and all this stuff. And you're meant to laugh at her, but gosh, as we've said repeatedly, why don't people take her seriously? I mean, she's actually the vehicle of the narrative. She literally, as Rowling embedded author, she is the author of the prophecy, or at least the vehicle of the prophecy, having been inspired by her lake or whatever. It comes out of her unwittingly, like a lake inspiration. And it's the foundational text around which it's the embedded text of the entire Harry Potter series. What does that prophecy mean? How do you understand it correctly? And the embedded author is the person who gave it to you. Come on, Nick. I think it's hard not to see Trelawney as Rowling's fun cameo of herself as this goofy. That she played that part. I mean, in the Smith biography of Rowling, we're given an image of her at lunchtime, reading palms, doing tarot card things, talking astrology, and that goof. And it was always to great laughter. People weren't coming to her looking for answers; they were coming to her for grins and giggles. Well, I think she put on the mask of Sybil Trelawney, of the great seer and all-knowing, Kreskin, whatever, and that she decided to embed that inside this. And then last, you left out Catherine Kent, Nick, and I tell you, Catherine Kent in Bombyx Mori, I think is Rowling writ large. I mean, she tells you how to read a book. She includes the interview with the big author. The big author is supposed to be Owen Quine, but is actually Catherine Kent talking to J.K. Rowling. Now, Rowling, I don't think would have approved of the work. That's the embedded text we really want. What was it called?
Oh, Melissa's Sacrifice.
That's
Melina's
Sacrifice. That's great. And really a wonderful, wonderful story that I'm looking forward to a series striker, at least giving us several chapters of Melina's Sacrifice. But Catherine Kent is who J.K. Rowling would be if she didn't have talent.
If she couldn't capitalize or spell.
It's sad, but Rowling, I think, has real sympathy for those kind of writers, and realizes that if she hadn't decided to go with the Harry Potter story instead of the one that she was writing, she'd have wound up writing the kind of autobiographical schlock like Casual Vacancy, and all the other big writers were writing. Instead, she did something that was not nearly so obviously autobiographical in Harry Potter. That's the argument that Casual Vacancy was written before, was largely sketched and filled out, and that was her primary psychological discharge before she wrote the Harry Potter novel.
So you're saying Catherine Kent is like a shadow J.K. Rowling?
Absolutely.
Separated by that gulf of talent, almost like a doppelganger in the story.
Rowling points to that in Lula Landry's relationship with Rochelle Antefati, where really Lula just looked at this woman, bipolar, mentally ill. It's an illness. That pathetic woman on the street, Lulu Landry understands that she definitely could have wound up there. The only thing that saved her was A, the adoption, and B, her beauty. That without those two accidents that Lulu Landry understood, she didn't have any role in those things. She didn't make herself beautiful and cute. She didn't cause her adoption. And she has to understand, though, that the whole arc of her life are consequent to those two things out of her control. And so she has tremendous sympathy for Rochelle and Tefani and wants to put that image in front of her.
Well, those shadow doppelgangers segue us nicely into the last of our golden threads. And I've got half an eye on the time, John, so I'm going to ask briefly, what can you tell us about doppelgangers within the books?
So you're going to ask me briefly. You want me to respond briefly. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Really, the shadow is a psychological complex. It's sort of your repressed self. And it's the antithesis. It's the person that you're always trying to deny. It's where, like, really the shadow is, the sun shows your persona, your front, but your back is where that light isn't shining. It's the hidden aspect of yourself. And Rowling is enough of a Jungian or a student of psychology, because this is a Freud thing as well, that she gives us really sharp doppelgangers inside the text. I mean, most clearly Harry and the Dark Lord. There's conversations about how much they resemble each other, and their backgrounds are kind of like yin and yang reflections of one another, and one's inside the other's mind. One has the soul fragment inside of him, and he's trying to expel that soul fragment. That's the critical doppelganger of the series is and everyone's uncomfortable with, is Harry's relationship with the Dark Lord. Isn't just that he was a victim and that his parents were murdered by Lord Thingy. It's that he's able to see inside his brain, and vice versa. Now, there's also the doppelganger, the weird thing of Harry and Neville, is that if the Dark Lord had chosen Neville as his enemy in the prophecy, would Harry have become a nebbish? Would Harry have become a nobody at that, instead of being the boy who lived? There's some performance to conformity to expectation there, that Harry rises to be the hero because he's assumed to be the hero, the chosen one. There's Strike and Shanker as doppelgangers, where they're brothers. They've chosen they come from absolute divergent backgrounds, and they have different career paths, certainly, and choices in life. And yet they're linked through the love of Strike's mother, that she unconditionally and without recompense of any kind took in Shanker as he was dying. And that maternal love links Strike and Shanker. Shanker will do anything for Strike if it has something to do even vaguely with Leda. Anyway, but again, one's trying to solve crimes, one is a criminal, and they have this bizarre relationship in that dark world in between those two things. But he is that shadow, and I don't think it's any accident that in that novel in which Strike and Robin break, it's Robin calling Shanker and not telling Strike that causes this thing, that she goes away to the dark side of Strike's character, and he can't deal with it. He literally can't deal with the exposure of that side of himself that he would have wanted to have been that person, because he did almost the exact thing we learned in Cyprus. He broke into the house and he rescued the baby and the mother. I mean, that's exactly what Robin is doing. And she's doing it with Shanker, who is this relatively lawless figure, and Strike can't deal with it. That we don't do that. This is my agency. There's Jack and the Loser. That Jack, he's really attached not only to the transference object of DP, but to the actual animal. He just wants that thing back, because that's something that he owns, and it's he identifies with it in a material grabbing sense. And that's what the Loser does. He sucks the enlivened parts out of things and sticks them on himself so he can have some sort of larger reality. Jack really has to transcend that aspect of himself in order to cast the light on the loser and to transcend that. We've got Lita and Joan Nan. I'm over the 5. I'm over the 3 already. But yeah, there's Lita Strike and Joan Nancaro as mother figures. Joan is a mother that we all don't like. It's just all over you. It's just smothering and it's really unpleasant. Just probing and criticizing, begging for more attention and affection. And Lita was just the opposite. Lita was like, I can drop you off at your aunt and uncle's anytime I want and take off and go look at the concert. And I can take you into the worst possible. I'm not gonna cut you loose because I am your mother. I am this sacrificial love incarnate. But it's not like I'm not a smothering thing. It's have a good cry, Lucy. That's good for you. And how about a fag strike, Cormoran? Just she's more like a buddy than a mom. And that opposition is why, at least Ilsa says, or Isla says that that's why Strike is so messed up, because his women are either one or the other. He doesn't have a middle ground there for as what woman is supposed to be. Robin, of course, is that middle ground. There's more. There's Quine and Fancourt as doppelgangers. There's with Joe North as the ghost hanging over them. It's doppelgangers are a big deal
I think it's like a lot of these threads. You say, oh yeah, there's a lot of doppelgangers, and I guess everyone else watching like me was going, huh? Oh yeah, John, prove it. And then suddenly you think, wow, you're right. There are a lot of doppelgangers.
Yeah. And this is we need the David Martins. We need people to say, okay, I'm going to go through here and look for all of these things. I did that with Pregnancy Trap, and it took me 8 weeks. It was a lot of it's a lot of time to go through every single book and go, okay, page by page, let's find this thing. That has to be done with all 14 of these things. We haven't done it yet, but that's you see how it pays off. What I'm interested in is what moment in Rowling's life experiences, her relationships, her crises, her unresolved issues. Where do we get doppelgangers? Where do we get the shadow self thing? She's been a student of psychology for a long time. You can't be into astrology, and that kind of thing, in tarot without getting into Jungian things eventually. And I think we're seeing that. But what was the event, Nick? What was the?
I'm guessing. There's always going to be a lot of speculation, isn't there? But we've talked before, or I've talked to you about that. There's a lot of double siblings. 2 seems to be the most common sibling number, and frequently the characters of the siblings are very different. Sometimes it's just shades of difference, but the differences are always sort of pointed out. And I'm wondering if that could be a sister thing. I'm a twin, so it's very obvious being within that twin relationship just how very different we are. Where it's very common for other people to see how superficially similar we look and assume we're basically the same person. I remember at school, I would borrow something and they'd ask my brother for it back because we're just we're part of the unit. So I'm wondering if possibly that came from. But we are running out of time, John.
Okay.
Great to cover this. What are we going to talk about tomorrow?
Well, the only other request that we've gotten has been for a whirlwind tour of ring composition. And I got to tell you, I've given weekend seminars on weekend composition where I've given 6 talks on this subject. And so this is definitely going to be whirlwind. But if people, and if you, it's going to be part of it. When I gave this a class, Wizard Reading Formula, in 2017, this was a whole week of classes with people coming in and talking about it. So yeah, this is going to be a whirlwind. But I'm going to talk about. You're going to talk about. I hope about where she gets the structure stuff, and maybe what books she gets it from. The shed side of this is going to be Mary Douglas and thinking in circles. The anthropologists look at this and how we see it inside. I'll do Philosopher's Stone, which is the shortest and simplest one.
Excellent. So hold on to your hats, everyone. It's going to be at the speed of light, and I'll see you tomorrow, John.
Hey, I'm taking this to a circular venue. I'm taking this to my other shed, Nick.
Okay.